Since it began its genocide in Gaza 19 months ago, Israel has relied on brazen propaganda, outright lies, and endless gaslighting to try and maintain the support of the publics in the West. Countless Israeli government spokespeople and state proxies have taken to the airways to beg us to ignore the evidence of our own eyes, treating us like we're idiots. But it just isn't working anymore. Piers, who supported Israel's so-called right to defend itself long after it stopped being fashionable, has recently decided the country has gone too far. Last night, member of the Israeli lobbying group UK Lawyers for Israel, Natasha Hausdorff, appeared on his show, where this happened.
I was told by the ambassador to UK it was a blood libel for me to suggest that Israel had killed children in this war.
No, I don't believe that was the case. I think it was to do with targeting children.
No.
And there is a difference.
Right.
Because we are hearing that Israel is targeting children, and that couldn't be further from the fact.
Last week, 9 out of 10 children in one home where 2 doctors reside were killed in an airstrike. What was that?
Remarkable.
Well, what was that?
That has been based only on the basis of hearsay.
You don't believe that story?
Information. I want these stories.
Wait a minute. You don't believe that those children were killed?
I have seen conflicting accounts, and I want that story to be properly investigated before the international media runs with it.
You think those 2 parents, one of whom I think operated on one of the children?
I have a question.
You think that those 2 doctors, the parents, they just made it up?
Why are
that
those
9 of their
children
10 children had been blown to pieces by an Israeli airstrike?
If this is true...
You don't believe it?
Well, why on earth was artificially generated imagery used to promote this story when it first happened?
I've got to say, Natasha, I think what you've just said about that family is despicable.
We've seen time
I'm sorry, it's despicable.
Blood libel?
As somebody, you talk about blood libel, like Dave said, you talk about blood libel, you talk about lies, you talk about promoting propaganda, and here you sit here as a lawyer and you say that you do not believe those 9 children were killed.
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth.
Do you believe it or not?
I said that there were conflicting accounts.
Do you believe it?
And it needs to be investigated.
Do you believe it?
I thought you would be the
parents said 9 of their 10 children were killed. Do you believe them or not? Or did those 2 doctors make it up?
They haven't said that directly as far as I have seen. I have seen second-hand accounts and hearsay. But it's important to ask, why are these civilians still there? Why is it that
it's important to ask whether you believe that family have lost 9 of their 10 children.
I want to know why the international community...
Do you? You don't. And this goes to the point that I would say about Israel generally now, in this war now. Israel says they don't believe anything. Every story that comes out about the deaths of civilians in Gaza, someone will pop up representing the Israeli government saying, it's propaganda, it's not true, I've heard it's not right, I've heard it didn't happen.
Yes, all of those tens of thousands of dead kids, it's all just Hamas propaganda, apparently, right? Ridiculous argument for her to make, right? And just try and say, okay, there's conflicting accounts, right? Well, they are 9 children of tens of thousands. Tens of thousands. We have records. We have names. Oh, but it was the Hamas-run health ministry, so you can't trust the list of names or the eyes and ears that we all have hearing and seeing the devastation in Gaza. And the fact that the question that she has, the IDF clearly doesn't target children, then we have already seen reports, we have seen x-rays, we have seen evidence of children with sniper shots to the head. It's indefensible. And the fact that she continues to try and defend it is just absolutely wild to me. Now, Natasha Hausdorff wasn't the only pro-Israel mouthpiece to have her ass handed to her last night. Israeli government spokesperson David Mencer appeared on Channel 4, where Krishna Guru Murthy gave him this once over.
You're not allowing the international media in. You do not give free passage to the United Nations. You've expelled UNRWA, the organisation which was dispensing aid, and you're saying that you'll investigate yourselves. It's no wonder people don't trust that.
So we're not interested in your trust. Our priority is getting our hostages home, Christian. That's what we care about. We're not sending journalists in. We want to get our hostages out. That's what we care about. Now, real journalists enter Gaza with the IDF. Hamas journalists never leave. And many of these so-called journalists who have been killed in Gaza.
An escort around Gaza.
Yeah. Many
Most
of these
real
so-called
journalists from outside Israel are not allowed into Gaza. Let us in.
Right. So we want to get our hostages. We want to get our hostages out. And rather than you in, Christian, that's our priority. Maybe your priority
You don't want us to see what you're doing. That's the truth.
Okay, so the story's on every single screen across the world. So this nonsense, this canard of it's not getting stories not getting out.
But not checked by the international media, and it allows you to say what's coming out of Gaza is untrue. So you stop us going in, and you dismiss what's coming out. And so you can carry on saying whatever you want, and you won't allow any independent investigation or scrutiny.
Look, when it comes to journalists, we are a free country, we are a free society, we have the most open media of anywhere, hundreds of miles in any direction. But unfortunately, an independent journalist in media, in Gaza, gets killed. Because if you put out anything hostile to Hamas, you get killed in Gaza. That's the reality.
It's the Israelis who have a record of killing journalists, whether it's Shireen Abu Akleh or James Miller or others.
That's an appalling, many so-called journalists in Gaza are actually, unfortunately.
Just incredible scenes there where he tries to not only try and move the dial away from the reality that Israel targets journalists in Gaza. They put actual photos of the journalists that they wanted to kill up on the internet, essentially as a kill list, right? And try and say that somehow that it's Hamas that are to blame for journalists being killed. They won't let people in without an escort so they can maintain their own narrative. It's absolutely crazy to me that this stuff is just continually said and they just expect us to believe it. Things like, oh, well, all we care about is getting the hostages back. You turned down ceasefire deal after ceasefire deal after ceasefire deal that had a full return of all of the hostages as part of those arrangements. And we know that it's Israel that's turned those down because this has been something that Hamas have been offering since the start. It is Israel that's the blockage to returning the hostages, as we have seen, because they want to continue the conflict. And Netanyahu wants to continue the conflict to maintain his power in government. Curtis, what did you make of those interactions?
Really, really wild stuff. I recommend your viewership, if you haven't seen the full interview with David Mensa and Christian Guru Murthy, please watch it. It is mind-boggling. Look, if you indiscriminately bomb Gaza, you're going to kill your own hostages. That has happened. So whenever they say, oh, it's about the hostages, they do not care. Now, to talk about the first interview with Piers Morgan, by the way, very critical support for Piers. I mean, I don't usually give my praise to him, but it was enjoyable to watch. Israel claims that we have killed 30,000 terrorists, right? And then Piers said, okay, then how many children have you killed? And they said, well, we don't really know. And he made a very salient point. If you know how many, we don't know how many terrorists were killed. They say 30,000, but we can't really trust Israel these days on anything. They had a number essentially, but how many kids were killed, they won't say. Of course, they don't want to say. Either they don't know themselves because they don't care to know, or they know the number is so high they don't want to say it. And this is the thing, right? One of the big casualties of this genocide is also the media and reporting. They won't let journalists inside Gaza. So whenever they say, well, you question Israel, you say we're killing children, that's blood libel, which I think is a disgusting smear, by the way, saying that's blood libel. Well, many people are asking the very logical and simple question, let us in Gaza, let us verify it. Maybe if you think we're pushing Hamas propaganda, prove us wrong, let us do it. They won't do it. So essentially, they just want us to trust their word. And that is how it's always been and how it's always going to be. And this is their tactic, right? Israel and spokespeople for Israel, the IDF, they are putting out so much lies that it's very difficult to combat all of them. You're trying to combat one lie and then they throw another one at you because that's their tactic, right? Just to they want to flood the market with their own narrative. But it's not working. I mean, look at the polling of people in this country, even across Europe. No one supports Israel. So they can do what they like in terms of their propaganda. People are not buying it. But yeah, I mean, of course, David Mensa, this guy used to be the head of Labour Friends of Israel. And it all makes sense, doesn't it? The internal fights within the Labour Party, attacking those on the left, those who support Palestine, obviously attacking Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. David Mensa was one of those people. He went on TV and called James Schneider. He called him a self-hating Jew. It's disgusting. And now he's doing propaganda for Israel. So we're going to hear this all of the time. What I do quite like is that there is a slight shift in the narrative in the mainstream media. Even Piers Morgan don't quote me, but I think he's used the term genocide. And some people are really starting to hammer Israel on this. Now, why has this happened? Why is there a change here? I mean, is it because they've suddenly woken up and grown in consciousness, or is it because some people worried, like especially in the media or in Parliament, that they're worried that they may be held to account as well with their complicity? Who knows? But yeah, it's wild to see. But I don't know how anyone could think that David Mensa did a good job here, because anyone watching would have thought this is absolutely bananas.
Yeah, nothing really disgusts me more than the accusation of blood libel being used so frivolously being used to defend the actions of an incredibly powerful state committing war crimes that we can all see and we can all hear and that we all know about, right? Obviously, blood libel itself being a horrendous anti-Semitic trope that's been there for years and years, used to smear people for something that is completely beyond the pale. But weaponizing that specific accusation against people who want to have proper investigations, proper independent investigations and verification of claims made by the IDF, and to look into the reality of what is happening on the ground in Gaza, and saying that anyone who makes any aspersions against the actions of the IDF as engaging in blood libel is the worst kind of weaponization, and it only makes everyone more unsafe when it is used so frivolously.